So, is the United States ending dual nationality for all American citizens? And will Americans have to give up any foreign nationalities they possess? That is what we'll be discussing in today's video. In this video, I'm going to walk through this new piece of legislation that was recently introduced in Congress, which would essentially strip U.S. citizens of dual citizenship, or would effectively make U.S. citizens lose their American citizenship. In this video, I'll cover the legality of this bill, important things to consider, some absurd consequences it could create, and just my overall thoughts on the matter. Because I know many of you are worried about this. We've had several people reaching out who are really concerned about it. So I wanted to tackle it right away. First and foremost, welcome back to the channel. My name is Adrian Pandy. I'm an attorney who helps foreign nationals work through the American legal system, and this video reflects my professional opinion and general legal commentary, not formal legal advice for your specific situation. As background, I previously worked at the U.S. Department of Justice at the Office of Immigration Litigation, and I have spent the better part of the past decade working in IM in the immigration field. So I bring quite a bit of experience when it comes to naturalization and citizenship matters in the U.S. And hopefully I can, share insights on this topic and make it engaging for you. If you enjoy the content, please hit the like button. If you enjoy the channel, please subscribe. That would be a huge help. And that being said, let's dive right into the topic at hand, which is Senator Moreno from Ohio introducing what's known as the Exclusive Citizenship Act of 2025. And let's get right into what it actually states. So what this bill does is create an ultimatum for any American citizen who holds foreign citizenships, whether it's one foreign citizenship or several. It sets up a one-year deadline during which any such American citizen must renounce their foreign citizenship by writing to the U.S. Secretary of State, essentially the Department of State. Or alternatively, one can give up their American citizenship through a Department of Homeland Security process if during this one-year period an individual does neither, so essentially doesn't renounce foreign citizenship with the Department of State, or give up their American citizenship with the Department of Homeland Security. In that scenario, the individual will be deemed to have automatically relinquished their American citizenship. So essentially, if nothing happens during that one-year deadline, you automatically lose your U.S. citizenship. In addition, any American citizen who obtains a foreign citizenship in the future will automatically relinquish essentially voluntarily their U.S. citizenship upon becoming a citizen of another country going forward. So given that the U.S. is a country built by immigrants, I understand why so many are worried about this bill, because countless Americans hold dual citizenship or multiple citizenships. That said, I want to walk through some of the major practical issues and also legal issues with this bill that everyone should keep in mind. Because while it sounds alarming, there's just a lot of important aspects that need to be clarified before this bill, I believe, could progress any further. The first one is the issue that renouncing is not so simple in many countries. So, while the U.S. has a formal process of renouncing U.S. citizenship, not every country permits its citizens to give up their citizenship. So, if you were born in one of those countries or born to a parent from one of those countries, you may be a citizen of that country without a way to give it up. So, I think a common example of this, or a major example, is Argentina, where one cannot simply renounce their Argentinian citizenship. But I know there are many other countries where it's very difficult and up to the discretion of the country to permit it. So it may actually be technically impossible to renounce one's foreign citizenship like this bill demands. On top of that, the way the renunciation would happen under this bill is by writing to the Secretary of State, writing a letter to the U.S. Secretary of State. But the problem is the U.S. Secretary of State does not have the authority and the power to renounce and end one's citizenship in a foreign country. That has to be done by the authorities in that foreign country. So essentially, if it's just going to be a letter, well, then it serves similarly to the current oath of allegiance, which every naturalized U.S. citizen takes, but there's no legal requirement to then go and give up foreign citizenship. So essentially, there are a lot of questions around how a U.S. citizen would even renounce this foreign citizenship. And the mechanism in the bill appears to be a rather incorrect way of doing that, legally speaking. Similarly, there's an interesting legal issue on the renunciation of U.S. citizenship side of the bill, because it says that if one doesn't want to give up their foreign citizenship within a year, they must give up their U.S. citizenship with the Department of Homeland Security. However, currently, U.S. citizenship renunciation is handled by the Department of State at U.S. embassies and consulates outside the country. So while there is there's a statute that may allow Department of Homeland Security to do this, it's been essentially very rarely used. And if now DHS were to have to handle all these renunciations, it would create a ton of extra work for the agency, and new processes would need to be created, which seems just highly unlikely if you ask me. Now, on top of all of these legal considerations, there's a massive tax consideration, which wouldn't involve immigration agencies, but more the IRS and essentially individuals filing these tax returns. If all these U.S. citizens all of a sudden were to become no longer U.S. citizens, right? They treat their citizenship as renounced, well, they may be subject to the exit tax, right? So I don't want to go into it in this video. There's a specific set of rules, but if you have a certain amount of income, certain net worth, when you exit the U.S., the U.S. tax code treats your assets as if you sold them on the day of exit and taxes them according to that. So there would be a huge exit tax event. And because essentially the bill says that anyone who doesn't take action in that one-year time frame automatically, voluntarily relinquishes their U.S. citizenship, there could be essentially millions of Americans who could have to pay this exit tax on their way out, which could become a massive issue as well. From a tax perspective, not just an immigration perspective. One of the most interesting practical consequences if this bill were to become law is that it would actually directly affect the president's family, because both the First Lady and the president's son hold dual citizenship, U.S. and Slovenian dual citizens. So it would require them to give up their Slovenian citizenship, which is just an interesting sort of practical consequence, touching the current administration and the president's family. If all of this isn't enough, there's actually a very big constitutional law question which calls the bill's legality into question. So there's a case called Afroyim versus Rusk, in which the Supreme Court held that Congress cannot take U.S. citizenship away from a U.S. citizen, and that U.S. citizenship can only voluntarily be relinquished. So unless it's a voluntary act, one cannot lose their U.S. citizenship. Now, the way this bill tries to get around that is by setting up essentially this waiver, where the argument will be it's voluntary, because the individual had that choice in that one-year period, whether to keep it or not. I am not convinced that that's going to be held to be a voluntary act by a U.S. citizen that would meet these standards set in the Afroyim case. And essentially, this bill will likely be argued to be a violation of one's constitutional rights under the 14th Amendment as clarified in that Afroyim case. So if you've gotten this far into the video, you can probably tell that I don't believe that this bill in its current form is going to become law. I just think there are too many legal issues, constitutional issues, practical issues with this bill for it to become law. So if you're worried about that, I think most probably that is not a real concern. But what I do think is a concern is the mere existence of this bill, because what it shows is that Congress gravely misunderstands how citizenship and these rules work. And what is completely misunderstood here is that one could become a dual citizen without them taking any actions at all, right? You could derive citizenship due to the birthplace of your parent in some cases, or your birthplace because your parents were vacationing in a particular country, right? So there are many ways that one can become a dual citizen without one ever intending to become a dual citizen. And what concerns me about these bills is that they could restrict an American citizen's ability to essentially freely live their life and take certain jobs, etc., etc. So that's where I would be very, very concerned, because I'm worried about where this could lead, where this is a first step in sort of a concerning pathway toward restricting certain Americans from fully participating in certain processes, and that I think would be worrisome. Anyway, if you found the video helpful, if you have questions or any comments on this topic, post them in the comment section below and I'll do my best to record similar videos in the future. Thank you so much for watching. Bye. Music.